Hey, Rivers Crossing, we have another podcast for you as part of our series called Mind Monsters. We're unpacking some feelings and emotions along the way here. Not necessarily a mental health series, but some of these things definitely contribute to or help with our mental health. So we've been unpacking a lot of stuff. The topic we're going to unpack today, I think, sends us in a bunch of directions. Insecurity. We have even briefly hit on it with some of the other episodes that we've done, some of the other topics that we've discussed, even as we were putting this together, things like narcissism and some other things. And I won't speak for you guys. I'm very excited, but I think this is going to go a bunch of directions. We actually had to hit record on this podcast really quick because Brett and Mariah were already starting to have a conversation. And we were like, save it for the podcast. So with that, let's just dive into this idea of insecurity. How would you define that? Not a Webster's definition, but because anybody could go look that up, but how would you define it? Or maybe it's listing the character traits that surround the person who's walked into your office, they've sat down, and you're like, oh, this person is struggling with insecurity because they look like these things.
Because they look like a human, right? Like I really think, like I often say, insecurity is not your problem, it's all of our problems.
Love that.
We all have self-doubt.
Yeah.
We all have parts of ourselves that we're hiding or that we're uncomfortable with and we don't feel like measure up. And that's just the nature of being in these kind of broken vessels. So I think normalizing it for folks is where I often start.
Yeah.
Because we do so many defensive things to try to hide it and to protect it and to not let it be seen. And there is real beauty in just being like, this is me. This is me with all my flaws and imperfections.
Vulnerability at that level is a hard place to get to. How do you walk to that place? If that's a healthy place to then live, how do you go from I'm not vulnerable to I'm not vulnerable, I'm not insecure, which in it is itself is, hiding my insecurity. How do I walk to a healthy place of vulnerability that doesn't make me feel less than or shame or, even some of the other topics that we've hit on?
Well, I only encourage people to be vulnerable with people they trust.
Like that?
So we don't encourage be vulnerable with everyone. It's safe out there. So who do I trust? And for some people, if they're being honest, there is no one. So therapy is a great place to be because we can start to form that. And we can, over time, you can give me more and more of your true self. But I would be encouraging people to look to who in your life has some seeds of hope that you think they could be trustworthy, and how do we develop that relationship? Because vulnerability connects us. So when you tell me your worst thing, I feel closer to you.
Right. Sure.
I feel more connected to you. I like you more.
Yeah.
Interesting, the research around blushing, people who blush, people like them more.
I've heard that, yeah.
And because their body's telling on them. And so vulnerability is the glue in relationships that profoundly insecure people don't have because they just won't let themselves be seen. So there is freedom in it and there's connection in it. And that's we can talk about that's part of the antidote, really.
Yeah, and I think we have to also look at it from a place of insecurity. Think of someone that you think may look like they're insecure, right? Also, the opposite person to that, sometimes the person that seems to have it all together, that has a strong defense to who they are or how they respond to things, could be the most insecure in the room. So not someone that's just I feel insecure about something about myself or how I look about something or how I do something. Some of that's a natural insecurity, right? That makes us human.
Yeah.
There's sometimes that insecurity that has created these defense mechanisms that creates a push away from everything because they want everyone to see it as they're perfect, they're doing everything okay, and that they are the most secure, when the reality is they're probably the most insecure in that situation.
Well, I'll be vulnerable in that moment of being an Enneagram 3. That's a wild fear of Enneagram 3. Now, thankfully, my life is crazy awesome, so I don't deal with it. But yeah, that's a big thing for an Enneagram 3. I would imagine if you told your clients, be vulnerable with everybody, it's safe out there, that you've created a client for life, because they're coming back with a lot of wounds after a week of doing that. What leads us to a place of insecurity? Is this kind of some of the other topics of there's some bio stuff here, maybe you were born this way? Is there some trauma things that push us in this direction? Is there some competition stuff that pushes us in this direction? What kind of takes our insecurity and sends it to that really unhealthy place?
Well, I think being vulnerable with an unsafe person is a really hurtful thing. and would cause us to not want to be vulnerable anymore. And vulnerability breeds vulnerability, Brett was just saying, right? And I think we often get these tainted pictures of how vulnerability breeds vulnerability, like in The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, right? It's very, very mainstream to like share the deepest, darkest secrets with people who are unsafe.
Yeah.
And then other people will share their deepest, darkest secrets
Yeah.
with people who are unsafe. And then it goes terribly.
Yeah.
Well, of
shockingly,
course.
shockingly, right?
You've known them for 48 hours, right?
And you're competing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we see it often that people are vulnerable with really unsafe people.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful to learn from.
Yeah, I think about us like entering the world as insecure, vulnerable humans because sin kind of broke the model, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then trauma, invalidation, parents doing the best they can, but still stepping on your toes, all the things that can go wrong in a kid's life.
Yeah.
Then we just start to pack away all these messages about ourselves.
Yeah.
That can be like, my parents said this one time, this thing. And what we know is that some of us are temperamentally sensitive, so we feel things really deeply. Some of us are like, rolls off a duck's back. It's like, that I have Teflon on me, that just didn't stick. But other people, those invalidations become very meaningful to their identity and who they are.
Yeah.
And so those folks often struggle with more emotion dysregulation, more profound self-image issues, not being sure who they are. And really, they experience life in a lot of times in similar ways even a sibling did, but they are manifesting symptoms and struggles that are different because they're just temperamentally sensitive. They're a gift. Being sensitive is a gift, but many of us go through life so beat up that it becomes a real liability or vulnerability.
So it's not that they went through the same thing as a sibling and they're remembering it different. They're remembering it the exact same way, but they are just internally processing it.
Right. And they may remember it more accurately, right? Or it may be distorted some because now I've had so many invalidations. Now my lens through life gets changed.
Yeah.
But yes, they're impacted dramatically by it, which can bring up a lot of shame. Like, why is it that or families say, well, stop being so sensitive. Like you take everything personally, like stop being, and again, it's like, okay, now another message that there's something profoundly wrong with me.
Yeah. And I think currently the trend with, culture of social media and everything is out there for everyone to see, right? It kind of exacerbates this place of insecurity.
Yeah.
That I've seen more and more, like from the past few years, that teens are taking on this message that they have to look, feel, be, and also us as adults take on the same message from like a social media platform that we have to look, feel, be. I mean, we're exposed to so much more. Our feelings are out there so much more. Our emotions are so much out there. Just being honest and authentic. This is the true me, and I'm posting it live, right? The component is what is really going on, because of that message that I may take and it be totally fine. I can watch it and feel nothing about it. Mm-hmm. You may take it and have a totally different experience from that. And you may take on a message that means if I don't look, act, choose, dress just like that person, there's something insecurely wrong with who I am. And that is when that shame message can come play in that. But I think that's the whole component, is that we live in a place that everything is live and at our hands, accessible. Like I can find out how Mariah feels about today if I go online, right? Like, so that component is that can feed some of that insecurity because we have so much access to security.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when Facebook started and I don't even know if you even have any social media at this point. I have a Twitter account that nobody follows, and I have a Facebook page that I get on less than 15 minutes a day. I mainly use the Twitter to follow sports stuff. We're on there. But I remember when Facebook started, the question it asked you, it put it in the third person. It was like, Josh feels, like it was even asking for your feeling, which to me feels like the most intimate thing. It's not even asking, what does my house look like? What vacation I was on? How is my marriage? It's not even asking those things. It's asking, how do you feel right now? And I remember a friend, posting on Facebook at that time. They were joking, but I think there was weight to it. Their joke was, more of you need journals and diaries than Facebook accounts, because all of a sudden it just became out there. And I think it brought us back to talk about trusting people not worthy of being trusted. Just everyone on social media, you've just, my relationship is in trouble because of XYZ, and that's not coming back. That is now out there, that's one way to stoke the fires of insecurity, right?
Well, and I think social anxiety gets at that a little bit, right? Because not everybody, when we're talking in front of a big crowd, not everybody is safe. And so it can be really easy to feel insecure or anxious and to trust that people won't terrorize us or, judge us in some way can lead to that social anxiety. I'm constantly impressed by people who get up on stage often, right? Pastors and speakers who are constantly vulnerable around hundreds of people who they don't know. They're not necessarily trustworthy. And how that might make some people feel really insecure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Insecurity, I mean, if you take it from that component, sometimes then comes from a place of perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
And so those platforms are really great. However, they also can cause some harm too. So they have to find a healthy balance with it, because what we've done is we've taught everyone it's okay to be vulnerable with everyone.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily reality. It's not everyone out there should have access to my personal life.
Yeah.
And so you have to find those trusted people, but that's not what that world has created for us. So some of that is a great group like Celebrate Recovery, a great group like a community group. These are great, a mom's group, a women's Bible study, a men's Bible study, a men's gathering. All those components are places for you to really speak to that insecurity. That's where you can practice this vulnerability with each other versus just putting it out there for the world to know right away. Test it here first.
Yeah.
And then let's see how that goes from here. But that's a place of even the most secure person, right? That you can think of can struggle with insecurity because it can come from that strong perfectionism component.
Yeah, I was thinking about how perfectionism and achievement are our efforts to mitigate insecurity. I thought when I could put all my degrees on the wall, it would soothe me, and it didn't. It was this false promise: if you perform, it will work. And I think about social media, one of its big dangers is posting the beautiful picture of your family, of your beautiful home, and your beautiful vacation. It's everything looks right, and that's even more intense. Why isn't my family looking like that? Or why don't I have that job or that home? And constantly feeding the you're not enough. And my heart breaks for kids and teenagers who they have global standards to live up to, as opposed to ours was our block.
Right.
It was these very few kids and families we interacted with, but now they're the pressure. Can't tell you how many kids and young adults have told me that they want to change the world. That's the standard for themselves.
Yes.
And that perfectionism, which none of us can live up to. So our only options to be a failure is just feeds the insecurity. Something must be wrong with me. I'm not a world changer.
Yeah.
And the bar just gets set so high.
I think you can see in the spending habits of the next two generations of millennials and zennials, just the way they're spending money, hopelessly never going to retire. Because
I am a millennial. So.
Well, you're married to a one, so he probably has things squared away for you in his
Hopefully
stubbornness.
that happens one day.
But just overall, just the way that they are. 401ks for those generations are just they're not enough, and you don't get those young investing years back. But you're seeing those spending habits because of this. I think insecurity triggering a lot of that. Of I had one friend went to Asia for a vacation, so we must now go to Asia for a vacation. Oh, and that friend has this house, so we have to have that house. Oh, and this friend has this car, so your comparison thing, like you said, it's no longer your neighbor.
Yeah.
It is now global, and your assumption is everyone has all of these things.
Right.
So I must have all of these things. And the race to get there, the damage that it's doing at a tangible place is rather scary.
It is.
And a lot of it feedback to social media.
It's global values, right?
Yeah.
We should value what everybody else values.
Yes, right?
But if we really take stock of what do I value, what is important to me? It's not what the global community values all the time.
Yeah.
And traveling and doing all those things might not be fun for you.
Right.
It's what looks nice and what we feel like we should do.
Yeah.
but it's not actually something that is fun.
Imagine that, the emotional and financial investment that you could potentially make of thousands of dollars and vacation time and hours and relationship strain on your family to go do something that doesn't even have joy on the other side of it, because it just feels like I have to satisfy my insecurity. So I'm investing all of these things in something that I don't even really want to do.
Right.
It just feels obligatory. Yeah.
But I should. Right.
Yeah.
This is what families do. This is what people should be doing. This is signs of success. And many of us can't get that bar. And so then the message just gets reinforced that I don't measure up.
Yeah, it comes from a place of assumption too, right? I'm assuming that what I saw in there is like they have their best lives, when they're just sharing a really great week that they had with their family, right? That is great. And they share it. Be excited about that. Be proud of those moments. Absolutely. But we're assuming, like I'm taking myself and I'm taking an assumption from what that means. I've now created a whole scenario of what their whole life is. Mm-hmm. And now I have to live up to that. It's about a me issue. Yeah. Not necessarily about the external, right? So I have to take stock of what I'm looking at. I'm just looking at something. This is the fact. This is what I know. That's all I know. And I cannot take anything else from that. I don't know that they saved for 2 years to go on that trip. I don't know that they reduced their house to a smaller size so they could spend more time traveling. I don't know that they were blessed with a trip because of this or that. I don't know any of those things, right? All I can see is this moment. It must be pretty terrific to be them. And instead of that, I then take that on as like, that's my own insecurity. It's an assumption. Out of my assumptions, then I'm creating shoulds and absolutes for myself. And then I'm operating from that standard that was never even set. I created that standard.
Proximity is the thing that's going to help the assumption, right? When you are in proximity with that family who takes that trip, then you get to get the answers of what was it that they sacrificed.
Yeah.
Right? Proximity with people and being vulnerable with people is what helps you understand the fullness, right? Not just the thing that we...
Yeah.
We have a part of ourselves that's always like scanning to see if we're okay. Right. So I'm looking at that picture and I'm looking at that family and I'm looking at that person's performance and like, am I all right? And insecurity will always kind of speak, right? So we have this story inside of us that often has an insecure theme to it.
Yeah.
And these other things can kind of intensify or pour gas on it.
So how do we take that into a spiritual place of, is there potential in this area of why people start a Bible reading plan January 1st and they bail when they get a few days behind because, well, no one else is behind, right? I'm the loser who's behind, so I just quit trying. Or, hey, I could never do a fast for 21 days of anything, so their insecurity kicks in and pulls them back in their spiritual growth. Do you think that's possible?
Sure. Perfectionists are almost always procrastinators. We think about the perfectionist who's like a type A overachiever, but most perfectionists are procrastinators because we can't live up to the standard, and a little bit of error or slip, and it's like, I messed it all up. It's ruined. It's spoiled. And so we relent pretty quickly.
And when we're looking at resolutions, right? Things that we want to do, maybe because we want to or because other people are doing them and we want to be like them. I think a way to reframe it might be to have an experiment, right? Because when we have a resolution and we don't meet it, we're the problem. But when we experiment and it doesn't go well, then we add a new thing to it, and we're not the problem, but there's a new variable that we can add, or we can change the variable. It's not us innately.
Yeah.
That is the problem, but we are the problem when we resolve to do something, right? Than when we experiment to do something.
Like that leads in. Well, I was going to ask, how do you break out of that insecure mindset? How do you start to shift out of that? So, along with that, I would imagine some sort of exposure, which we talked about a few times along the way, figuring out little ways to have those experiments. Is that a good way to kind of reshift your brain?
I have a cool little story.
Okay.
So my wife is a scientist at P&G, and they were doing a women's event, and they brought in a speaker to talk about insecurity. And what the speaker told them to do was to act like you're not insecure. right? So two things stick out. One, you got a room of scientists who are all like really smart and really capable, and you're identifying insecurity as a problem. And then you bring someone in and their solution is go opposite. Act like you know what you're doing, and then you will eventually feel it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the exposure is like, if there's something I feel inadequate to do, the more I do it, the more I realize I can do it.
Yeah.
But if I look to my feelings to tell me the truth, I'm in trouble because my feelings are often distorted. They're often lying. And so sometimes I just have to go opposite of that feeling. And if I know insecurity is a problem for me and I tend to listen to insecurity, I'm ruled by it, that's my first step. It's like, okay, I can become aware of that. And now I'm going to just disobey and I'm going to act like I can't.
Yeah, kind of, as you're talking like opposite action, that also thinking of like that moment of like just observing, right? Be observant of where you are, what is going on, what are you taking in, and then being able to describe that a little bit to yourself, right? That component then changes the way we begin to see things. It shifts us from the things that we assume, the things we actually know to be true. Yeah. And that's allowing really that emotion and that logic to like find wisdom.
Yeah.
When I think some of us feel insecure because we compare, and then some of us feel insecure because we feel judged.
Yeah.
And I think many of us, I haven't named my Enneagram publicly yet, but I am a 2. And, but we have a propensity to accidentally judge others constantly. And so we often feel like other people are judging us because we are constantly judging, right? And if people aren't actually judging others constantly, then maybe we might feel some relentlessness or some relief, right, towards that judgment.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Well, if we wanted to give people some tangible next steps where they've identified of, okay, I think I struggle with a little bit of insecurity here. It's kind of defeating me. And what would be something tangible you could give to them to try this as a good next step?
There's a singer-songwriter that I like to listen to, Andrew Peterson. And he has a song that's Be Kind to Yourself. And over and over and over, the words say, be kind to yourself. And I think sometimes we just need that reminder that it's nice to be kind to yourself. We're kind to everybody else.
That's right. Yeah, love that.
Yeah. Our family kind of has this little like mantra that we say, be brave, show love. And on my professional sign-off, I say, be brave and show kindness. And it's not just about the external. It's also about like being brave with my own things that I'm observing about myself. Yeah. And showing love and kindness to myself. Because that's then is going to come out in who I am to those around me. And I think that the component is that, when I said, observe and describe, it's like really just observe, like, what are you taking in? And what is the message that critic? Is a critic leaving you a message? And if it is, then let's describe that and figure out what we want to do with that. And how do we shift that so that it can be from a healthier place that's more secure in my faith and your identity. And when we know who we are and our identity is something that secures us. That's security.
Yeah.
Is our identity.
Yeah, love it.
And our identity comes in Christ, right? But we'll become insecure if we lose sight of who we are in Him.
Yeah. Our inner critic has a function, and its function often is to protect us, which is curious because it's often beating us up, ridiculing us, making us feel terrible. But its goal is to try to keep us out of harm. So you can't do that. Don't do that is a way to like, don't take the risk. You're going to get hurt again. And so if we can honor this part of ourselves, like, I know you're trying to protect me because maybe these things have happened or these messages have been spoken over you, but what you're saying doesn't work anymore. And I honestly don't need this message anymore. I can have this part, I can honor it, but I don't have to obey it and listen to it.
I like that.
So I can have a conversation with this part. I know you're scared.
Yeah.
I know in the past these things have happened, and we're going to do something new. We're going to try something new. We're going to let ourselves grow. You're actually okay. It's all right if you make a mistake. Like, you won't fall apart.
So your therapeutic advice, Brett, has been 2 things. It's been talk to yourself.
Yes.
And fake it till you make it.
There you go.
Love it.
You didn't even have to pay $140 for that.
That's so great. Thank you guys so much. I think this is a heavy one. as we've said on the end of all of these, if something in here kind of clicked and kind of challenged you, then save this away. If you want to send this along to someone, then please do share it.
Yeah.
But if all of this is bringing deep emotions up and things like that up, then help for your mental state is just like help for your body. You'd go to a doctor, or you'd go see a physical therapist. If there's something or here that is causing you isolation or causing you pain or fracturing key relationships you have, then don't have shame about getting help. Find someone that you can talk through. Find someone that is trustworthy if you don't have anyone in your life, and get some help for that, because this one can be fairly crippling and lead to a lot of things. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.